Hello friends, I welcome you all to another edition of Daily News Analysis. So in this particular edition, we are going to discuss some very important articles that are part of Hindu as well as Indian Express newspaper today. The first important article that we are going to discuss is about physics Nobel being announced, particularly the research on quantum tunneling. Important update from the perspective of GS3 science and technology part. Another important update is regarding India-UK relations in the wake of British PM's recent visit to India. Important analysis from the perspective of GS2 international relations part. Another important article is about World Bank lowering India's FY27 GDP forecast to 6.3%. Particularly important update from the perspective of GS3 economy part. Another important analysis is about revitalized gold monetization, a path to progress that is paved with gold. So essentially, in recent times, we have seen the prices of gold reaching newest heights. So in this regard, how we can actually, utilize our own domestic gold that is with the households. Very important and interesting analysis there from the perspective of GS3, again economy part. In decoded section, that is important from the perspective of mains particularly, we are going to take a look at interesting and important analysis titled why Indian capital particularly needs to invest domestically. So considering all the external shocks that Indian economy is currently facing, the investment by Indian capitalists in particularly in domestic market is very, very important now more than ever. So stay tuned for that particular article as well. So the first article that we are going to discuss is about Nobel Physics Prize of 2025. So this particular Nobel Physics Prize has been awarded to the three scientists whose work is very essential when it comes to quantum mechanics. So they have shown that quantum tunneling can be possible at the macroscopic level, particularly when it comes to electrical circuits that they worked on. Particularly that electrical circuit is essentially called a Josephson junction. We are not going to discuss micro details of that particular junction here, but they have shown that even in those macroscopic level electrical circuits, the quantum mechanical laws are followed. So to certain extent, it is very, very fundamental work that they have done in way back in 1980s that have changed the course of quantum mechanics overall, and the recent developments in quantum computing in particular show the fundamental importance of their particular work. So the scientists John Clark, Michael Devereux and John Martinez have won the Nobel Physics Prize of 2025 for the discovery of macroscopic quantum mechanical tunneling and energy quantization in electrical circuits. As I said, they have shown that at macroscopic level in Josephson circuit in particular, the quantum mechanical laws are followed. So essentially, their work has happened way back in mid 1980s, and that has been recognized now. See, their work sounds esoteric at first glance, but its significance runs very deep. As I said, they showed that quantum weirdness particularly, the quantum world is very, very weird. Essentially, there is very famous quote by Einstein, spooky action at a distance. He actually described the quantum mechanics, or he derided the quantum mechanics, calling it that God does not play dice. So essentially, although quantum mechanics, the quantum laws seem weird, the laws that are normally followed at the atomic and subatomic particle level can reveal itself in electrical circuits big enough to hold in one's hand, like Josephson junction for that matter. It is the discovery that bridges the invisible world to the very small with the tangible one that we currently inhabit. It is wonderful to be able to celebrate that the way century-old quantum mechanics continuously offers us new surprises. It is enormously useful as quantum mechanics is the foundation of all digital technology today. That's the statement of the chair of Nobel Committee for Physics. So essentially, very important statement given by the chair herself, that to certain extent, the developments that we are currently seeing through in say quantum computing, even quantum communication, that has happened on the back of giants like Niels Bohr. Then there is very Heisenberg particularly, then there is Dirac in earlier times in 1920s, 30s particularly. So they defied the normal physics standards at that point of time by exploring the world of quantum mechanics. So essentially, you can clearly see the trio here that has won the Nobel Physics Prize, very, very important. So let's look at what exactly is the quantum tunneling. So there is very beautiful presentation given here. So you can see in normal world, in macroscopic world, when the child throws a ball at the wall, at the barrier particularly, it essentially will bounce back. But at the atomic and subatomic particle level, if we consider the ball as an atom, it will actually surpass that particular barrier, and you will find that particular particle or ball on the other side of that barrier. So essentially it will tunnel through the barrier. That's very interesting. As I said, at the quantum level, the world is very weird. To understand what they achieved, imagine throwing a ball at a wall. Classically it will bounce back or stops, but in the quantum world a particle can sometimes tunnel straight through. That's tunneling, one of the quantum mechanics strongest predictions. Essentially it is just a prediction, but at the macroscopic level, in Josephson junction in particular, these particular three scientists have shown that at macroscopic level this quantum tunneling does happen. In another hallmark of the quantum realm is quantization. So the energy isn't continuous but comes in fixed amounts. There are quantas of energy packets. Atoms, for instance, can only absorb or emit certain chunks of energy. That's why we can see the spectrum in particular. So you must have seen there is Rayleigh scattering, then there is Raman scattering. All these scattering related phenomena and the particular line that we see correspond to particular wavelength happens, and it can be the theory can can be traced back to the quantization of that particular energy levels. Particularly in the mid 1980s, Clark, Devereux, Martinez used superconducting circuits cooled to near absolute zero, where electric current flows with zero resistance. At the heart of their setup was Josephson junction, two superconductors separated by thin insulating layer. So Josephson junction is a junction where two superconductors are separated by a thin insulating layer. Remember that. See, in mid 1980s, these particular three scientists used superconducting circuits, so cooled to near absolute zero. Although we cannot achieve absolute zero temperatures, but we all know that when the temperature is cooled down to say the near absolute, it offers the electric current flows with almost zero resistance. That's the property or phenomena associated with superconductors. When they passed a current through such a circuit, the entire system acted like a macroscopic particle. It could escape from one quantum state to another, tunneling through an energy barrier and producing a tiny measurable voltage as well. They also found that the system absorbed and released energy only in discrete steps, confirming energy quantization in a man-made circuit as well. For decades, physicists wondered how big a system could be and still show quantum effects. Normally, when many particles are involved, quantum behavior fades as well. So the laureates demonstrated that with the right materials and extreme precision, even a chip visible to the naked eye can display unmistakable quantum signatures. So at the level of macroscopy, at the macro level in particular, you can observe the quantum. So let's look at some of the important concepts and terms. First and foremost, quantum superposition. It is the principle that quantum system like an electron or a qubit in quantum computing can exist in multiple states or configurations simultaneously until it is measured or observed. So essentially, quantum superposition is the phenomena where essentially an electron or a qubit in quantum computing system, it can exist in multiple states or configurations simultaneously until and unless you observe it or measure it. So essentially that's the basic of quantum computing, quantum superposition in particular. There is very famous experiment called Schrodinger's cat as well, a famous thought experiment where a cat in the sealed box is considered both alive and as well as dead at the same time due to the superposition of radioactive atoms decay. Until the box is opened, the cat is observed. You cannot definitely say whether it is alive or dead. So within the box, we can say that the cat is alive as well as dead at the same time, until and unless you observe and until and unless you go and observe and open the box. And until that point, you are not sure what exactly is the state of the cat. there is very important Heisenberg's uncertainty principle as well, that states that it is impossible to simultaneously know the exact position and momentum of a subatomic particle with perfect accuracy. This fundamental concept of quantum mechanics implies that the more precisely one property is measured, the less precisely the other can be known due to the wave particle duality of the matter. So, the matter can be wave as well as particle at the same time. Particle essentially, energy quantization is observed. So, that is pretty much obvious. Matter can be wave, it can show a wave like property as well. For example, we can say that the quantum tunneling is sort of, wave like property of the matter to a certain extent. Another important, concept is quantum entanglement. It is a fundamental quantum mechanical phenomena where two or more particles become linked, sharing the same fate regardless of the distance separating them. So, that is what, Einstein called a spooky action at a distance. So, this non-classical correlation where the particle states cannot be described independently is crucial for developing quantum technologies like quantum computing, quantum cryptography, or even quantum teleportation as well. We are going to see whether teleportation is possible or not in upcoming times, but let us hope it may be possible, because at the quantum level, at say the subatomic particle level, it is possible. As I earlier said, quantum world is very weird. So, as I said, quantum computing is a type of computation that uses qubits particularly. So, when it comes to this particular research of these scientists, the trio of the scientists, they have shown that from the lab to the quantum future, macroscopic quantum circuits are more than scientific curiosities. They form the backbone of technologies like quantum computing, quantum cryptography, and ultra precise sensors as well. Superconducting qubits, quantum sensors, metrology and fundamental tests. We can see the application in all these phenomena currently. A century old theory, but still full of surprises. So, that is true. This is this particular quantum mechanics, as I earlier said, has origin way back in early 20th century, but it continues to astonish us through its very weird phenomena. So, a century after Planck, Schrodinger, Einstein argued both about the limits of the quantum world, three experimentalists showed that the same mysteries can play out not just in atoms, but in devices built by human hands as well. So, at the macro level also, the quantum phenomena can be observed. So, very important, as I earlier mentioned, that National Quantum Computing Mission is also very important to know here. So, National Quantum Computing Mission was approved by the cabinet way back in 2023. It's government initiative of Department of Science and Technology to develop quantum technologies and applications in India, funded with almost 6,000 crores of funds for the period of from 23-24 to 2030-31 for almost for the 8-year period. So, the key objectives and targets, some of the key objectives and targets are important here. Quantum computers build intermediate scale quantum computers with 50 to 1000 physical qubits within 8 years. In nearer term, 20 to 50 qubits in 3 years, 50 to 100 qubits in 5 years as well. Quantum communication, we are also aim to achieve quantum communication, satellite based secure quantum communication of over 2000 kilometers within India, long distance secure quantum communications with other countries, intercity quantum key distribution over distances of almost 2000 kilometers, multi-node quantum networks with quantum memories as well. Quantum sensing and metrology has been focus as well. Quantum materials and devices, development of quantum materials and devices as well. Organizational structure and implementation, you can clearly see we are implementing it through hub and spoke model. There will be quantum computing hubs. For example, there is one at IISc Bangalore, there is one at IIT Madras as well, IIT Bombay, IIT Delhi. So, all these premier institutions will have quantum hubs. So, they will act as a sort of research functions, research focuses. So, why it matters? It obviously has strategic importance. As I earlier said, quantum technologies are developing fast nowadays. Economic and innovation boost, research and development boost, it will create ripple effect in that regard as well. Global competitiveness, India will join other nations investing heavily in quantum tech, ensuring not falling behind in such a crucial technology as well. There are certain challenges and considerations as well. Just go through that, not that much important. And this is very important practice question for you. Just comment your answer in the comment section. So, this is also very important question on the National Quantum Computing Mission. Very interesting and very important. Just comment your answer in the comment section. So the next important article that we are going to discuss is about India-UK relations. Starmer leads 100-member UK delegation on visit to India. So the British Prime Minister particularly is on a 2-day visit to India starting Wednesday with a delegation of over 100 people, including CEOs and representatives from the British institutes, universities and industry groups. The visit comes months after India and UK signed a trade deal during Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit in July to UK as well. It also comes as both countries are navigating major geopolitical shifts, including their respective trade relationships with US under the current Trump administration. Mr. Modi and Mr. Starmer will deliver keynote addresses at the Global FinTech Summit as well in Mumbai, engage with business leaders, and according to government press release, they will also take stock of the India-UK partnerships relationship reframed during Mr. Modi's visit to UK in July particularly as being guided by Vision 2035, a 10-year roadmap spanning a range of dimensions from trade to climate to education to technology and people-to-people ties. So, this Vision 2035 documents, remember that it is the vision document for the development or the relationship between 10-year roadmap relationship between India and UK. Remember that. Dependable ties in an uncertain world. Very true. India-UK relations are very defendable. In the current global environment where US President's disruptive approach has created uncertainties, India and UK have opportunity to be reliable and predictable partners for the near future as well as long-term future. As an Indian official said, the FTA is the floor, not the ceiling for the relationship. That is very important statement. While Starmer is facing some domestic political challenges, but UK does play a very important role at the global stage. The Indian diaspora forms about 2.6% of the UK's population, contributing to academia, literature, science, business and politics as well. So almost 2.6% of UK's population is Indian origin. So very important role the Indian origin people will also play between the development of these two countries. More than 65,000 companies in the UK are owned by Indian diaspora. That is also very interesting and important achievement of Indian diaspora in UK. This contributes heavily to job creation, local economic growth and taxes. This forms the living bridge between the two countries. Although there is huge history between the two countries, essentially the Indian diaspora play a very important part. India-UK relationship is robust, multifaceted and mutually beneficial. So, during PM's visit to UK in July, a comprehensive economic and trade agreement, CETA, the Vision 35 document as well as new defense industrial roadmap was also signed. The key pillars of India-UK Vision 2035 include growth and jobs in the UK and India, education and skills partnerships to nurture the next generation of global talent, developing cutting-edge technology and strengthening defense and security cooperation as well. So, economic cooperation very important to know here. So, India-UK FTA connects the world's 5th and 6th largest economy, India being 5th largest here. In 2024, the bilateral trade reached around 56 billion US dollars, with UK imports at USD 17 billion and Indian exports at GBP 26 billion as well. So, of the total GBP 18 billion came from trade in goods, GBP 25 billion from services. This trade is expected to double by 2030 as well. We hope to double this particular trade, boosting economic cooperation between the two nations. The FTA offers enhanced market access for Indian businesses, particularly in sectors like textile, leather, footwear, toys, sports goods and gems and jewelry, engineering goods and auto parts. So, in recent times, Trump has imposed double the tariffs on Indian goods particularly. So, in this wake, the India-UK FTA particularly happens to open up the UK's businesses to UK market to Indian businesses. The India-UK CETA particularly, Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, provides duty-free access to almost 99% of Indian exports by value, supporting MSME and creating new employment opportunities in India. While India is UK's 11th largest trade partner, remember that. India is UK's 11th largest trade partner, and the trade deal is expected to contribute an increase of just 0.13% of UK GDP over the long term, the equivalent of almost 4 billion pounds annually. The agreement with India has repeatedly cited by the British PM and his colleagues as an example of job creation as well. So they argue that it will create jobs in the UK itself. The agreement encourages with growth in IT, ITES, financial services, education, professional services, promoting high skill job creation across India. It also reduces operational costs by providing lower costs for professionals and employers. The Double Contribution Convention grants a 3-year exemption from UK social security contributions for eligible Indian professionals on temporary assignments, benefiting over 75,000 workers as well. Defense cooperation is also very tremendous here. India and UK are strengthening defense cooperation through Defense Industrial Roadmap, focusing on co-design and co-production of defense products to meet domestic and global demand. A major area of collaboration is jet engine development as well. So the both countries are working on jet engine development as well. The partnership also includes a broad range of activities such as joint military exercises. There are port calls, defense technology cooperation, export exchanges, defense education, etc., etc. Education is also playing very crucial role as Indian students in the UK. The number is around 1,70,000. Various UK universities are planning to establish campuses in India as well. For example, there is a news of University of Southampton coming to Gurugram as well, making it the first foreign university to set up campus under the new education policy. A MOU for mutual recognition of academic qualification was signed in July 2022, and hence UK degrees are formally recognized in India. So now UK degrees are formally recognized in India. There are many, schemes as well, like young professional schemes. There are many scholarships, and then there are work pathways particularly exist for, say, the student who are studying currently in UK. So research and innovation, the two countries are working in research and development as well. And India UK Science and Innovation Council is held once every 2 years to develop bilateral relationship in science, technology and innovation. The UK is India's second largest international research and innovation partner, with a joint research program pegged at 300 to 400 million pounds as well. MOU was signed in 2023 for wider cooperation, especially in quantum technology, clean energy, pandemic preparedness, AI and machine learning as well. So there is, tremendous collaboration and cooperation when it comes to research and innovation part as well. You can see the culture and connectivity is also important area of cooperation. For example, when it comes to culture, there is film co-production framework, there is creative industries growth, people first benefits as well. When it comes to connectivity part, more local access to services, more flights and seats have also been announced in recent times as well. So cultural ties are getting improved, connectivity is getting improved between the two countries. So overall, the relationship is on the right track because both countries are, on same page when it comes to important bilateral as well as global issues. So from the perspective of prelims, particularly knowing the map of UK is also very, very important. See, UK is sort of an island country, but it has very important, regions. You can clearly see the topography, the geography of UK here. There is Scotland, Wales, England, and then there is, Cardiff as well. You can clearly see prime meridian passes through UK. So you must know the countries on the prime meridian as well. The nearest major hubs, major cities in particularly to the prime meridian can also be very interesting and important question from the perspective of prelims. So, go through this particular map, very, very important. You can observe some of the important seas here. There is, Channel Tunnel, English Channel in particular. Then there is France on the other side. You can clearly see there is Ireland as well. So there is Irish Sea, and then there is Northern Ireland as well, which is essentially the territory associated with Britain. Then there is Atlantic Ocean, then there is, overall Isle of Man as well, you can clearly see. So just go through these particular maps, very, very important from the perspective of prelims as well. So this is very important practice question for you. Just comment your answer in the comment section. So the third important article that we are going to discuss is about World Bank's growth projections. So the World Bank in its latest projections have lowered India's FY27 GDP growth forecast to 6.3%. So essentially it has, urged reform urgency in its latest report as well. Growth forecast to 6.5%, but when it comes to FY27, it actually reduced the growth forecast to 6.3%. So the World Bank lowered its GDP growth forecast for India by 20 basis points to 6.3% for 26-27 FY27 particularly due to risk from 50% tariff imposed by the US. At the same time, the multilateral agency raised forecast for the current fiscal by 20 bps to 6.5% on the back of higher than expected growth rate of 7.8% clocked way back in April-June quarter. At 6.5% and 6.3%, the World Bank's growth forecasts for the current and next year are lower than that of RBI. So RBI has, RBI rather has raised its forecast for 2025-26 by 30 bps to 6.8%. Meanwhile, the 6-monthly monetary policy report said that assuming a normal monsoon, no major external or policy shocks, GDP growth for 26-27 is seen at 6.6%. Although the World Bank has projected decline in the growth, RBI is very optimistic for the growth forecast when it comes to FY27. It has projected the growth of say 6.6%. At the same time, particularly for this quarter, it has raised its forecast by 30 bps to 6.8% as well. Not for this quarter, sorry, but for the whole year 25-26. Remember that. So RBI is very optimistic, but at the same time, World Bank projections have, clearly, the World Bank projections have clearly show the impact of the Trump's tariffs. So the reform push. So in this regard, the RBI, the World Bank's report argues that there should be reform urgency. In 2025, Indian government has focused on boosting domestic consumption through key reforms. Union Budget 25-26 particularly reduced personal income tax rates under the new direct tax regime in February. At the same time, in recent times, we have seen the historic GST Council reforms, the reduced GST rates on September 22 particularly. It will actually boost consumption going forward. According to BVR Subramaniam, CEO of Niti Aayog, a new round of major reform is expected before Diwali as well. A committee led by Rajiv Gauba, a former cabinet secretary and current Niti Aayog member, has already submitted its first report in that regard. Two committees, both led by Rajiv Gauba, were set up in August to advance the reform agenda. Additionally, two informal ministerial groups under Amit Shah, Rajnath Singh were formed to suggest economic and social sector reforms as well. A separate task force on deregulation has also been established. But at the same time, the report argues for the reform urgency when it comes to labor market reforms particularly. So labor market reforms like, the labor codes, the implementation of labor codes is also very important in that regard. So we are going to see, what sort of further reforms the government will implement through its Rajiv Gauba committee reports. But at the same time, World Bank also sees external risk to India's growth. External risk poses a significant challenges for India according to World Bank, with a potential global slowdown likely to impact India despite its relatively closed economy. India has experienced growth slowdowns during past global recessions and would be affected again if one occurs now. The return of Trump to the US presidency has led to reintroduction of sweeping tariffs, including 25% on penalty on Indian imports due to the Russian oil imports and arms imports, as well as reciprocal tariffs on Indian goods earlier that were imposed as well. In 24-25, India had $41 billion merchandise trade surplus with US, making it a key trade partner. However, Trump's push to eliminate US trade deficit has led to demands for bilateral agreements that includes US investment guarantees in return for tariff reductions. So Trump is demanding certain sort of concessions so that the trade deficit gets filled up. So although India began trade deal talks early with US, it still faces higher tariffs as negotiations are ongoing, creating uncertainty for exporters and investors at the same time. So on the other hand, World Bank report also bats for transforming Indian manufacturing as well. Manufacturing sector is the one where, the capacity to absorb, say, the labor is high. World Bank emphasized that manufacturing for exports is a key growth area for India. It would help attract much needed FDI, which has recently slowed down, and also will create jobs at the same time. So we must focus on the manufacturing sector. To achieve this, India needs to take major policy steps to make exports and imports easier. This includes cutting tariffs on intermediate goods. So it is often, Many countries often accuse India of high tariffs, which are currently more than double the average of in other emerging markets. That's why, uh, there are many recommendations of cutting tariffs across the board. Uh, World Bank also highlighted the need to reduce non-tariff barriers that go beyond, say, the UK trade deal for that matter. India should target agreements with Europe, Australia, Canada, and the US, giving it access to almost 50% of the global GDP. So, some sort of diversification of exports is also advocated by this particular report. For India to generate millions of jobs and factories, a broader improvement in trade policy and market access is essential, the World Bank report concluded. So, this is very interesting and important practice question for you. Just comment your answer in the comment section. So, another important article that we are going to discuss is about revitalized gold monetization scheme, a path to progress that is paved with gold. Indeed, in recent times, we have seen the prices of the gold touching, unprecedented levels. So, essentially, a revitalized trust-based gold monetization scheme can help India define its growth on its own terms. So, although India imports lot of gold, there are when it comes to domestic gold reserves, apart from, say, the reserves held by RBI, the Indian households also have tremendous amount of gold. So, current scenario, in the face of current scenario, what is that current scenario the article talks about? Atmanirbharta, that is self-reliance, has been central to India's identity. Very true. Atmanirbhar Bharat is our goal, not just as an economic strategy, but as a guiding philosophy of resilience, self-strength under Prime Minister Modi. This vision has been reinvigorated, translating to big ideas that will give real achievements across key sectors at the same time. India's history shows that in times of crisis, self-reliance leads to transformation. From the Green Revolution in 1960s to the IT boom of 1990s, to the indigenous vaccine development during COVID-19 times, and now to increasing self-sufficiency in defense. All this shows that self-reliance like Atmanirbharta will lead to tremendous transformation. The next frontier for self-reliance is financing India's growth. See, most of the time when it comes to capital investment, the issue is of finances. So, to finance India's own growth, we need Atmanirbharta in that regard as well. While India has attracted over $1 trillion in FDI since 2000, recent global trends show shrinking investment flows, with FDI down by 11% and project finances down by 27% in 2024. So, in recent times, we have seen flight of FPI, the decline in FDI in particular. That's why we should have our own domestic finances to finance our own growth engine. Given the volatility in foreign portfolio investments, the global shifts away from liberalized capital flows, India can no longer rely heavily on external sources. The solution lies in mobilizing domestic wealth to fund the nation's future. Bharat must fuel Bharat's growth. So, these are the scenarios that have been discussed in this particular article initially. Then the article argues that the gold, a stock of immense value, will give us the particular solution to actually fund our own finances. Gold has long been a symbol of security and wealth. Very true. In Indian households, today Indian families hold nearly 25,000 tons of gold. This is very surprising statistic right here, that Indian households hold 25,000 tons of gold, valued at around $2.4 trillion. So, the gold held by, say, Indian families and households uh, will be valued at around $2.4 trillion, over 55% of India's FY26 GDP, and more than total credit extended by Indian banks. So, despite this massive reserve, India still imports about 87% of its gold demand. So, still there is demand for the gold, making it one of the largest gold importers globally as well. In the early 2010s, gold imports contributed to nearly third of India's trade deficit, creating a major economic imbalance as well. So, this contrast, holding vast gold wealth while importing most of it, presents both a challenge as well as major opportunity for India's economy. That's why, to actually give the boost to our own growth projections, particularly in the government has came up with the gold monetization scheme way back in 2015, considering the recognizing the potential the value of gold holds. Since India's gold use is deeply cultural, restrictive measures won't work. Instead, the country needs a revamped trust-based gold monetization schemes that avoid pitfalls of past attempts which failed due to poor infrastructure and limited reach. The gold monetization scheme that is announced by the government way back in 2015, to a certain extent it is a mixed bag. We are going to see what sort of scheme that is, what sort of output it gave. But at the same time, the article now argues that we need a revamped, more trust-based gold monetization scheme. India can learn from global best practices. Countries that built assaying facilities, launched innovative gold saving products, and digitized gold flows through mobile platforms. These measures successfully integrated large quantities of private gold into the formal economy, a strategy that India can now adopt. At the same time, let's look at the gold monetization scheme in short here. So, introduced way back in 2015, the gold monetization scheme GMS aimed to mobilize idle gold held by household, trust, etc., and channel it into the financial system, reducing reliance on gold imports. It offered three types of deposit, tenures. There is short-term bank deposit, medium-term gold deposit, and then there is long-term government deposit of 12 to 15 years as well. The scheme allowed even small amounts like minimum deposit limit reduced to say just 10 grams and allowed banks and jewelers to participate as well. Interest for medium and long-term deposits were fixed by the government. For example, 2.25% for the medium term, 2.5% for the long term under earlier provisions. By November 24, a total of 31,164 kg of gold had been mobilized under this particular gold monetization scheme. About 7,509 kg in short term, 9,728 kg in medium term, and almost 14,000 kg in long term deposits. Around 5,693 depositors were participated as of 2024 in gold monetization scheme. But there are recent changes, and in that particular scheme, on March 25, the government of India announced the discontinuation of medium term and long term deposit options under GMS with effect from 26 March 2025. From that date onwards, new deposits under MTGD and LTGD categories will not be accepted. Existing deposits made under those medium term and long term categories before March 2025 will continue until the maturity under the original terms. They are not affected by the discontinuation. So, the medium term and long term arm of the GMS has been discontinued as of now. The RBI is expected to issue detailed guidelines reflecting these changes in the upcoming times. Although the government has kept short-term deposit options of 1 to 3 years under the GMS. So, this is about gold monetization scheme. Now, the article argues for revitalized gold monetization. The future of gold monetization in India rests on three key pillars. What are those three key pillars? Infrastructure first and foremost, logistics, and then there is digitalization. So, these are three pillars on which the new scheme, or rather the reformed gold monetization scheme, should rest. First, India needs a scaled up hallmarking and purity testing centers to ensure trusted standardized valuations. Although the number of BIS registered centers has nearly doubled in 4 years, much of the market still relies on unbranded gold, limiting recycling and formalization. So, the article first and foremost argues about scaling up hallmarking and purity testing centers. Second is about logistics must be strengthened. While banks can manage money flows, specialized center should handle secure, transparent movement of gold, creating an efficient ecosystem in that regard. Third and last is digitalization, which is very essential. Households should be able to track their gold deposits just by linking to bank account, increasing confidence and participation as well. So, ease of say investment is through digitalization should be our goal. However, the core requirement is trust. This means eliminating frictions like GST, customs scrutiny, and ensuring no questions asked approach. Although it is very problematic right here, but to certain extent, to actually encourage more gold being formalized through the banking channels, the trust is of very vital nature. Returns must be clear, direct, with no hidden cost to depositors. If implemented properly, the gold monetization could raise funds at a cost of just 4.5 to 6.5% cheaper than international borrowing. So it will give us, the cheaper options, say, compared to international borrowing. Even modest participation could have transformative impact, reducing gold imports, improving the current account deficit, uh, creating a massive pool of domestic capital to fund growth in infrastructure, manufacturing and innovation. So, essentially capital investment will get boost, and due to that we will have the multiplier effect on the economy. India has a history of turning crisis into capabilities, from achieving food security in green revolution to becoming global IT leader in the digital era. The call is for financial self-reliance, and that can happen through mobilizing, say, domestic wealth like gold. Tapping into India's vast household gold reserve is more than economic decision. It is a civilizational imperative, according to the article. Bharat can fund Bharat using its own strength and resources. To realize this vision, India must move forward with trust, foresight and determination. This is about building a system where domestic capital powers national growth, free from, say, over dependence on external sources. At the same time, the goal is clear: an India that is self-reliant in both spirit as well as substance, financing its own future and defining its growth on its own terms. So that's very beautiful sort of dream to have. So apart from that, let's look at the gold reserves. So as of mid 2025, the countries with largest gold reserves are US at the first place, then there is Germany, then there is Italy, France, Russia and China also hold significant reserves, while India has steadily increased its holding as well. So India has more gold deposits than Japan now, remember that. They have exchanged the places, but you can clearly see that Switzerland, the tiny country, has more gold deposit than India. Although US is the leader in that regard, followed by Germany, Italy, France, Russia, China, and Switzerland, India, then Japan, then Netherlands as well. So remember, this statistic here is very important. You may get a question directly in prelims in that regard. So this is very interesting practice question for you. Just comment your answer in the comment section. So in the decoded section, we are going to take a look at an article titled "Why Indian Capital Needs to Invest Domestically." So Indian capital and domestic investment, as the global economy now moves to an extended period of uncertainty and unpredictability due to tariffs and fluctuations, say, in the world trade, India's private business houses have to work closely with the government and align with public interest to maintain the economy's growth momentum. So India's private business needs to step up. That's what the article argues. Although profit is the motive whenever there is any sort of investment, whether it is capital or current investment. A central challenge for policymakers in India today at the present juncture is to work out a balance between the long-term benefits of global trade and short-term harms that current uncertainties pose to large sections of the population who are at risk of low wages and unemployment. Tackling this requires a change of the existing system to account for the needs of the large masses rather than only enriching private capital's interests. So, evolution of capital. Indian capital must evolve to serve broader interest beyond profits, especially in the face of, say, global economic uncertainties like tariffs and trade distortions. As external demand weakens, Indian businesses need to partner closely with the government to mitigate risks and sustain growth at the same time. Historically, private enterprises in India benefited from protected domestic markets before liberalization. They used these conditions to grow, accumulate wealth and later expand globally post 1990s. These led to the rise of new business class in India. However, India's uncertain global landscape, these corporate giants must realign with public interest, contributing to national resilience and economic growth rather than relying solely on market protection or government concessions in that regard. The development of mass markets globally has relied on three forces: the emergence of wage labor class, mass industrial productivity and rising personal incomes. which shifted the composition of demand itself. Demand growth is crucial but often overlooked in economic planning. Many policy frameworks wrongly assume demand passively follows supply, ignoring the active role of domestic consumption in driving profits and production. With external demand under pressure, India must shift focus to boosting domestic markets. Expanding internal demands offer a sustainable path for growth, helping reduce economic vulnerabilities caused by global shocks. So, the article argues for, say, the extended consumption boom, and for that to happen, the domestic investments are very crucial. The importance of domestic capital. Domestic capital in India has a crucial role in simulating or rather stimulating demand, primarily through three channels. First and foremost, private investment, wage growth and R&D spending. So, these are the three primary areas where private businesses in India can invest. So, private investment, for example, for that matter, despite record high corporate profits, private investment remains flat in India. Since the pandemic, public investment, particularly in infrastructure like railways and highways, has driven the growth at annual CAGR of almost 25%. Although, corporates have recorded tremendous profits, but at the same time, the private investment remain low. In contrast, private capex has not picked up, even though the government has offered tax incentives, eased regulations and improved credit access as well. Despite the government efforts, the private investment hasn't picked up post-COVID. Interestingly, Indian businesses are showing more interest in investing abroad, with outward FDI growing at 12.5% CAGR compared to say the global average of almost 4%. This suggests a need to redirect capital inward as well. The outward FDI has grown in recent times with almost 12.5% of 12.5% CAGR. At the same time, there is very flat private investment domestically. On the other hand, there is wage growth related issues. While corporate profits reach 15-year high in 23-24, wage growth has stagnated at the same time, in turn weakening overall consumption. Obviously, if you are not giving the proper wages, the living wages on beyond it to the workers, the consumption will be casualty. Real wages are projected to decline slightly in FY26. Contractualization in formal jobs is eroding worker bargaining power, particularly in manufacturing, affecting income distribution and dampening domestic demand as well. So, the contractualization particularly, essentially that has been the trend in recent times. We have seen the stagnation in formal workforce. Although there is gig work, the gig sector is expanding, the contractualization even in formal work is also an issue. That is actually also suppressing the wage growth in formal sectors, and in a way that itself is suppressing or dampening domestic demand. Investment in R&D. Third important area where businesses can expand is investment in R&D. India's R&D spending is just 0.64% of GDP, far lower than other major economies. Private sector contributes only 36%. This is very stark sort of statistic here, that private sector, even out of say the 0.64% of GDP, out of that GDP R&D investments, only 36% is invested by private sector, with most R&D spending concentrated in few industries like pharma and IT. Even that 36% is concentrated in pharma and IT, not in say the fundamental science. In contrast, countries like China and US see over 70% of R&D funded by private enterprises. India must boost long-term investment in fundamental research to drive innovation and productivity. For sustainable and inclusive growth, Indian capital must play a more active role by investing domestically, supporting wage growth and strengthening R&D efforts. This shift is essential to build a resilient demand-driven economy in time of global uncertainty at the same time. So, to conclude, we can say an uncertain global economic environment calls for united response from the government and the private sector. While the government has been facilitating the creation of favorable environment for businesses, that effort alone is not sufficient for tackling the present challenges. Long-term national interest needs to be protected by Indian capital by keeping it as an objective above profit maximization. It is time for Indian capital to step in more actively. So, the article here actually rightly suggests that Indian capital, Indian domestic capital in particular, needs to, pick up the private investment first and foremost, private investment. Then it needs to work on wage growth, and then it needs to invest more in domestic R&D as well. So these three areas are very, very crucial, because there are global headwinds when it comes to, investment by global investors in Indian markets. Indian businesses, the domestic investors, can pick up the pace now. So that our growth and our objective of develop India by 2047 is achieved. So this is very interesting and important practice question. That's it from my side, and stay tuned for another edition of Daily News Analysis. Thank you.